Good morning, everyone. Happy Christmas to one and all. Today, we will look at the second part of understanding the adolescence. Today's topic is mainly handling the adjustment problems in adolescence. So, when any one of us look back at our adolescent age, it is a period where there are uncertainties, there is loneliness, and then it's a period of real vulnerability. More so, it is true in case of sexuality issues. Even though over past 2-3 decades, the sexual activity has increased, but the sex education did not. So most of the high school students, there is no course of sex education. And then very sadly, they are unaware of the basics of sexuality and the risks involved in sexual behaviors. So the other important aspect is about the truancy, so which we have discussed in detail in our school refusal episode, where kids, mainly the adolescent group, does not attend the school, forming groups, and then they are into activities that are not acceptable by the adults, and most of the times parents are unaware of their activities. And then adolescent again is the beginning of all adult psychological problems, more so with the depression. So we are going into details of two major conditions today: conduct disorders and then self-harm in young people. Before we kind of move into the details of it, let us look at a short clipping and then come back to the main content.
Om Surya Namaha. Om Surya Namaha.
That small visual clipping is expected mainly for the purpose of illustration, in order to introduce the concept of how discipline and value system are important in an adolescent's life. So an adolescent who feels well connected to their body are well connected, and then they are psychologically healthy. The importance of discipline we have already discussed at length in our first episode on our child videos, where discipline is more than caring, and it is mainly to help the adolescent in order to bring these internal controls which will help them to adjust well in the outside world, which is much more complex than the home situations. So discipline takes time to achieve, but there are some uh, uh, amount of some percentage of adolescent groups are unable to follow these discipline and get into severe problems. So the conduct problems comes into picture here. So most of the adolescent want to break the rules, and then there are periods where they don't want to obey the rules, and then they want to be naughty and then break the rules. But then this group of kids move beyond this normal pattern, and then they get into much more severe kind of behavioral problems. So here they might get into behaviors like assaulting and abusive and destroying things that are important for the adults or the parents. And then they might get into stealing and lying behaviors with no signs of guilt when they are found out. And then they are into real troubles in following the rules, not only at home, even in society outside. So here, these children with these conduct problems usually get into uh, drug use and alcohol abuse, where they get into these kind of groups more than antisocial, the kind of groups getting into stealing behaviors, and they steal from the cars, from the houses, and then they are into a kind of legal issues. So they're usually they stay away from home in the night, and then they are not attending the school in the morning, like the truancy kind of situation. And most of the times they have difficulty in making good friendships, because most of the children reject them, and then they are unable to make long-term friendships because of their aggressive behaviors, impulsive kind of aggressive behaviors. And they are usually asked to leave the school sooner or later, because they can be disrupting the classroom situation, and then they're usually hostile and aggressive kind of behaviors that they show towards teachers, and the other peer group actually makes them kind of misfits in their high school kind of environments. So this kind of conduct problems are a real area that one need to look into. What is really making them get into these kind of breaking the rules, and then behaving negatively? uh, is it really that they are wanting to do, and what is the reward that they are getting out of it? So here the main concern here is that these kind of uh, kids usually they feel very low about themselves, with low self-esteem, and they are aware that they are feeling empty, and then they usually blame themselves and the environment around about the situations that have turned out the way they are. So looking at the causes, what is causing this group getting into these kind of conduct issues? So generally, kids who are having a kind of fussy temperament, and the way it is handled by the parents or the caretakers can be one of the important factor. So the way of handling would have well established this kind of behavior, the handling in an unhealthy way, or raising hand, or you know, putting them into severe kind of unhealthy kind of situations by the adults must have kind of brought this unhealthy pattern, and then they start behaving it, and then they continue this behavior repeatedly. So the way an adult or the parent handles is one of the important factor that is actually making it more worse. So looking at other factors, hyperactivity is one other condition where their children are usually impulsive, and then they are unable to cope up with their grades in the school, and they are getting into these kind of groups, can also get into conduct kind of issues. The other group is having intellectual and learning disabilities. Here also the children, due to difficulty in their academics, and then not very popular in their classrooms, usually rejected by the peer group, get into and attracted into these kind of groups, and then usually get into kind of drug abusive or alcohol kind of risk exposures. So other kind of group that can be exposed to this kind of risk is uh, it's very easy for a parent to kind of neglect a well-behaved child, and then they are given attention only when they are behaving like not in an acceptable way, and then that's the only time they are getting attention. Invariably the child gets into a negative pattern of gaining attention only by doing these kind of negative kind of behaviors. Could also be one of the factor that is identified. And sometimes inconsistency in the discipline, where because the parents having themselves having issues like depression or overworked, or because of the other family related issues, the child is not consistently kind of disciplined, and sometimes given way to their kind of behaviors which are not acceptable, and then this inconsistency must have led to an established kind of conduct issues. These are the other some of the possible causes. So how can we help these kind of children? Looking at the help that is required, it has to be more a kind of intensive kind of care that they require, and straightening the discipline at home, and then making restrictions at home with a little more consistency can help to some extent. But the conduct disorder, once well established, is usually difficult to turn around and come back to a normal situation. But some amount of help that we can bring in might improve the situation, like taking professional help, where a kind of well established kind of team approach, working with the school, how these children can be helped by trying to help them to attend the regular school, and bringing in the working on, if they have hyperactivity, working on the hyperactivity issues, and if they have learning and intellectual issues, how to handle these issues, and especially helping them if there are any other additional family related issues, relationship issues between the family members can sometimes aggravate the problem and worsen the situation. So it needs a complete understanding of the situation, and helping the adolescent, listening to the adolescent, their problems, what is that they are you know going through, is also very important here. So a kind of uh, more structured kind of environment and a consistent discipline at the earliest, with the help of professional, especially the mental health professionals, and family counseling approaches can help to some extent to handle the conduct problems. And again, the same rule that I tell for all the psychological conditions, the earliest one can handle the earlier signs of misbehavior, one can become alert and help these children. The well established problems of conduct disorder can be handled in much more quicker and better way. So this is about conduct disorders. The second condition that the young children are exposed to is the self-harm and suicidal behaviors. So it is alarmingly increasing rate of self-harm in young people is making the situation more and more worrisome. So what is making these young people getting into this kind of self-harm behaviors? So a lot of times there is an underlying depression or severe mental disorder that the youngster is going through, which must have gone undetected, and then it is a kind of the kind of indication that they are giving in order to get some help. So the kids who are at risk, the high risk group is mainly, when they have a severe mental disorder, or when they have already made a previous attempt, they are also at high risk. And especially the drug abuse and the alcohol kind of, if they are into this kind of behaviors, high successful suicidal kind of attempts are they are at high risk of suicide, risk for suicide. So these are some of the high risk groups. And then looking at the causes, what is making them getting into these kind of self-harm behaviors? So most of the time, as I said, this is a cry for help, or sometimes they may not have very major issues. It is just a feeling of feeling useless, or that no one loves them, or it can be just a rejection by a friend, or sometimes dispute or arguments with the parents, where usually they quickly make this decision to end their life. And most of the times when they are attempting, it is a kind of a little bit of regret at a later point of time. They usually don't resort to very harmful kind of self-harm kind of behaviors. And but when an adult or a parent notices this kind of self-harm behavior, it need to be taken seriously. It is like a message in the bottle. And then the person who has attempted once, if a right help is not given, there is every chance that the person might repeat this kind of self-harm behavior again. So it is important. And is it an kind of attention seeking, or it is a real cry for help? So like I said, if it is if the teenager is already suffering from depression or undetected by a parent, or a severe mental kind of illness, all these things might actually um, need to be addressed in order to handle this kind of situations. So need to take the professional help is very, very important, and special care need to be taken in order to provide a safe environment, and also observe their day-to-day activities. The parents need to spend time and then try to understand, listen to them, what is the kind of issues that they are bothered with. And it need to be understood from their perspective, like in the part one that we have discussed about the different psychological changes that happen in their kind of temperament, it is important that a parent looks at the teenager more from a kind of adult perspective, and like in a friendly way try to look at what is making them feel upset and what are they worried about, and then need to make solutions for the problems that they are going through. Sometimes if these teenagers have been exposed to someone who had had a successful attempt of self-harm, uh, of a relative or someone who is close to them like a friend, they are at high risk of repeating or getting into these self-harm behaviors. So how to help these people is mainly the professional help need to be taken at the earliest, and usually when there is a kind of self-harm attempt has been made, the hospitals where they are admitted, a mental health professional has to do a detailed assessment before they kind of taken care from the harmful effects of whatever the harm that they have, the kind of fatal kind of medicine that they have taken in order to harm themselves. A detailed assessment not only of the teenager but the entire family, if there are any problems that are there in the family in relationship to the adults, that need to be addressed, and uh, it need to be taken care at the earliest. So this is in brief about these two conditions that I wanted to discuss in this episode today. And in the next and the last episode, we will look into two more important aspects of the adolescent adjustment problems, related to how the diverse and separation of the parents can affect a teenager, and about the severe mental illness that an adolescent is at risk of. So thank you all.